Cincinnati kids playing for the Cincinnati Reds, but it's been part of the history here, leading us to this book. It's called The Local Boys. It was written by a pair of brothers, Joe and Jack Heffron, who are with me tonight. Congratulations. This is a terrific book.
Thank you, John.
I mean, if you like history, you like baseball, and you want to know something a little bit more about the people here that have played it, I think it's good. Hey, did you guys have any thought of how many local guys had played for the Reds? I'd say if somebody had asked me, I'd say, oh, maybe 50, something like that. How many did you find, and what was your thought on what it was going to be?
Well, yeah, actually there's 105.
105.
And we are in the longest drought in the history of the franchise. It's been since 2008 when Junior left. Before that, there were only 10 seasons dating all the way back to 1869 where there wasn't a local boy who played, the whole season or one game. So, yeah, we figured there were quite a few.
Joe, how did you find all these guys? And information. The nice part about it is it's information about also what happened to them, what they did later, or what they're doing now. There's a lot of really cool information about people that have been forgotten.
Yes, well, Jack interviewed a lot of the people that he could, all the players that he could get in contact with, and family members. And we went on the internet and looked up some information on people, and we went through newspapers. We went down to the library and looked through newspapers to find information about the players and different things. So it was really...
The cool thing is, I mean, we know the Larkins and we know the Griffeys and the Billy Dorans, but who knows Bob Clark or Charlie Case or Jack Bushelman or Mike Burke, Cornelius Neil Brady. I mean, these are obscure players that may have had a cup of coffee here, right?
That's right. Yeah, as we were writing the book, I would tell people that we were chasing about 25 Moonlight Grams without a magic cornfield.
That's right.
You really had to dive deep to come up with some information about these guys. And we really wanted to tell the full story, because you'd go on Baseball Reference and he played 6 games and, gave up 3 runs or whatever. But we really wanted to get a sense of where they grew up, what circumstances led them to play for the Reds, and what they did afterwards. So it took a lot of digging.
What is the criteria for being local? How local do you have to be? Because you know how local is around this area.
What we did was we chose all the counties that border Hamilton County. And what we did was the players who spent, the modern players, if they went to high school in this area, because there have been a lot of people born here who didn't grow up here, like Tom Hume. Eduardo Perez also was born here but didn't really go to high school.
So they don't qualify.
So they don't qualify. And then so people who were born outside of Cincinnati but who grew up here, like Buddy Bell and Ken Griffey Jr., who were not born in Cincinnati but they went to high school here and grew up here. So that we considered to be local.
Dayton, not local.
No.
Lexington, not local.
No.
Right. If they weren't from a county that actually bordered Hamilton, we had to, because you have to make the cutoff at some point.
Yeah.
So.
Any idea how this compares? If you went to Minneapolis and looked at the kids, or I would imagine Southern California, there's a ton of them. But to have a Midwestern team with this many local players, I think is significant.
We checked that out and we found that per capita, Cincinnati ranks 5th. Of all the players since 1920 to make it to the major leagues. Cincinnati is 5th. There's 3 cities in California, and then the other one is St. Louis. And those are the only cities with more people.
Not Chicago.
No.
No, how about that?
Yeah.
Okay. I've wondered as I looked at this, because I saw some that I watched play, and I remember Jeff Russell's debut. Wyoming kid played. We mic'd his dad that night. And I thought to myself how difficult it might be. It's wonderful to be a local player, but I'm wondering if you guys, as you went through it, found out it's hard also to be a local player playing for the Cincinnati Reds.
Absolutely, and a number of them kind of talked about that. And then in some ways, and we got a number of quotes on that too, that the fans are harder. The expectations are that much higher for a local boy. So back in the 50s, Herm Wiemeyer was a good pitcher, but the fans would boo him if he was wild. And I think we have high expectations of those guys, and I think that makes it hard. A number of them also talked about it wasn't even so much hard on them as hard on their families and their friends who are at the grocery store and they're hearing, well, how come he didn't get that hit in the bottom of the ninth with 2 guys on base? Yeah.
You got to do that, and if you want to sit in the stands, you're listening to that, and if you don't have a thick skin, that's tough, isn't it?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
yes.
Like you said, no current local players now playing on the Reds.
Right.
Any idea for the drought? Because there are still enough Reds players playing, or Cincinnati players playing throughout the major leagues.
Yeah, there are, and well, we were kind of speculating in this past winter if maybe Kevin Youkilis might come back. He ended up going to Japan, but there had been talk for about a year or so about whether he would come back. Andrew Brackman pitched AAA last year.
Moeller kid?
Right, exactly, and yeah, we were kind of watching that closely too to see if he was going to be able to come up and break the drought. So, well, you mentioned Jeff Russell's and his son, who actually I believe was born here, is with the Cubs. So they're out there, but for whatever reason they haven't come home yet.
Joe, do you think the management has made a conscious effort over the years to sign or develop local players when they had the opportunity? Do you think that was, or was it just because they afforded themselves that this kid was available then?
I think they have tried to develop them, and I think it made it easier for the Reds to get players if they were local, and the players would be more likely to sign with the Reds. I think they had felt that, and I think later on, I think Jim Bowden seemed like he brought back a lot of players who were local players. It seemed like even if he traded him, he seemed to bring him back. Like Scott Service was one, where he would trade him, and then if he were released, the Reds would re-sign him. So it seemed like they had an effort to do that. Just give them the opportunity.
As you did this, we all know the stories about Pete Rose and Joe Nuxall and stuff like that. Were there some stories that stood out, and I'll ask you both this, Ed, that you said, wow, that's pretty neat. I never knew that.
You went to Larry Luber's, maybe?
Well, I think the Larry Luber's story is nice. Larry Luber's father owned a farm in Kentucky, and when Crosley Field was being torn down, his father bought a lot of the remnants of Crosley Field.
I remember that,
so
sure.
They rebuilt Crosley Field on the farm, so Larry Luber's didn't have to pretend that Crosley Field was his backyard. It actually was his backyard. So that was, I thought,
Do you
an
think
interesting story.
Anybody else that especially, because I knew the Larry Luber story, but especially I looked at all these names, and there's so many of them, that Scott Klingenbeck, I remember him, Larry Jacobus, never heard of him, Bill Irwin.
Right, yeah. The story that I love is a guy by the name of Amos Scott, who was a 19-year-old guy living in Bethel, which is only a few minutes out of town now, but back then was a little farm community. Sure. And in 1901, the Reds were devastated with injuries, kind of like we are this year a little bit with their, and they desperately needed pitching. And he began sending letters to the team and the box scores saying that what a great pitcher he was, striking out 100 guys in 6 games or whatever. And the local media was just desperate for a positive story to tell, and so the Reds signed him sight unseen. And the headlines, the Bethel Wonder Boy is coming, and he pitched his first game against Christy Mathewson, Hall of Famer, and the New York Giants. Got slaughtered. They thought, well, maybe he's just got stage fright. So the next time his turn in the rotation came up, he pitched against Christy Mathewson and the New York Giants, and they beat him even worse. And so the Reds kind of let him go, and that was his 2 games. And they figured out later that the anonymous letters he was getting from the Reds fan was actually him writing these letters, and
That's
it
great.
worked.
That's great. Well, it's a great book. It's called The Local Boys. Joe and Jack Heffron have put this together. Congratulations on a nice
you,
effort.
Well, thank you, John. Thanks for having
And
us.
it also dovetails with an exhibit right now at the Cincinnati Hall of Fame and Museum. So a lot of your work has been put in to a really terrific exhibit.
Yep.
Thanks very much. That's our show for tonight. For Jack and Joe, and also for Kostya Kennedy and Phil Castellini, I'm John Popovich. Good night, everyone.